Hey, hello, howdy, and however I greet you when I meet you, and welcome to another episode of Get in Tune, a musical talk show. As always, I'm your host, Cainan Greer, and this week, yes, I am again flying solo. At the request of my best friend, after hearing about the week I've had and sort of just my thoughts, this is a semi part two of the previous episode. I want to talk about balance. I think balance is so pivotal when becoming an artist. No matter what the artist is, no matter what the art is, I should say, balance is a necessity that I feel so many of us lack. And I want to understand the word. Balance refers to an even distribution of different elements. As a vocal technician, as a person and a teacher and a coach that has such an intense focus on producing a healthy sound, producing a clean sound, producing a technically proficient sound, I had to restructure my way of thinking the first time I engaged with a student that had a voice that did not fit into the Western European musical traditions standards of excellence for tone quality. He had a naturally airy voice. He was in pubescent transition. His voice was shifting. And even so, it wasn't super, he wasn't what you would consider a typical singer. But I had to learn to meet him where he was to make him shine. How did I do this? Well, I had to listen. I had to listen to what he was doing and saying, what can I give him that will make him shine? So I started giving him music from TV shows where the characters may not have had traditional singing voices, like Steven Universe, like Adventure Time, and he began to shine and he began to open up. And I was able to slip in technique here or there to improve upon where he was naturally gifted. And my job right now requires me to look at a bunch of people and figure out how I can teach them while also amplifying what's naturally there already, building the artist that they already are. They already are, and heightening it to a level that is marketable. That is legitimately what artist development is. And I work for an amazing artist development company here in Atlanta called AGI. But this week has been illuminating the balance that I spoke about in the last episode, where, to paraphrase myself, technique is king to a point. I had the chance to adjudicate all of the students' performances at the end of the week. They work all week on learning repertoire, and then I adjudicate at the end. And my main note over and over and over and over across the board was a singular word: discovery. I don't feel, and this is a skill. Now, mind you, I didn't harp on them about this because they're young, but I want them to understand the idea of discovery happening within art. My job is to make you aware that discovery is a thing and give you the technique to support and maintain through the process of discovery. Some of you may not know what I mean, so I'm going to explain it to you as best I can. When I say discovery, I'm talking about the concept of finding the truth in the work, finding the context, isolating the context, amplifying the story, I want to see the moments happening. I tell my students that I want you to imagine that this song is not pre-written, that the scene is not pre-written, and that the words are flowing naturally, even if it's not from a musical theater piece where the words are supposed to flow naturally because the character's having these thoughts out loud, even if it's not scene work per se. And I find that the pursuit of discovery seems to come last to a lot of young and adult developing artists. And I think it stems from this hyperfixation on technique. Technique is great, but technique does not equal believability. You can sing every note correctly. You can lift your palate at all the right times. You can place the breaths in every moment, and you may only skim the bottom of the believability category because you don't know the story. You don't know the intention behind the moments. And that's hard for young people because they haven't lived yet. It's hard for the students that haven't taken the language arts class to be asked, why are the curtains blue? Why did the author make the curtains blue? What do you think the author's purpose was? I'm going to be frank and say I hated that exercise as a student. I was like, this is so stupid. Who cares what the purpose is? Let's just talk about what we can see. But as I've grown into a person that consumes and creates art, I see the reason behind needing to deduce context, to understand context, to legitimize context, to find a legitimate justification, even if it isn't the intended justification by the composer or the author. What is your justification? It's amazing to see young people and adults kind of get confused when you ask them when they're singing covers, well, why are you singing that high note like that? I will challenge them every day when they say that's how the record goes. Because I learned in my own journey that that may be how the originator emotionally felt the arc should go. But what's your emotional arc? What's happening in the character's mind for you? And it blows the children and the adults away when I say the word character and they're singing an R&B or a rock piece. There's still someone is singing. Are you singing? Is God singing to people and you're just relaying the message? Are you singing to God? Are you singing to your mother? Are you singing to your father? Are you a different gender singing to their significant other? Like, what is the character? What is this piece in your mind? Because technique doesn't answer any of those questions for me. And I, as the listener, can fill in the blanks. But if I'm not already given context by what you, the artist, are giving me, it's hard for me to fill in those blanks. It's hard for me to relate. It's hard for me to connect. And for the longest time, I myself thought sounding good was enough until I got to the point where I sounded much better than I'd ever sounded. And I would listen to my performances and still be dissatisfied. So, a good focus of my week has been reflective of the conversation that I had in the previous episode. Piggybacking off of technique is king to a point. Another point that I mentioned last week is that we have to stay in touch with our inner child. Not just to remember why we did this, why we started, but it's to continue to allow that child in us to grow and inform our work. You may ask, how will your inner child inform the work of now? Well, it always does subconsciously. You can read a song and tell if somebody has, a detachment from love. You can tell if they're bitter. We look at artists all the time who write a bunch of sad songs and go, well, they must be bitter. They must still be hurt about this relationship that we remember from the tabloids. You know, we can read plays and tell if the author has mommy issues or daddy issues or doesn't believe in marriage. And most of that is information that stems from childhood trauma. But on the flip side, wonder belongs to a child's imagination. I want to say disinhibition, but I don't think that's a word. I need to Google un momento. Uno momento? Disinhibition. Oh, is it? Come on, Google. Okay, well, it may not be exactly what I was looking for, but inhibition, wonder is disinhibited. Wonder is impulsive sometimes. Wonder is shackleless. Wonder and imagination live in the same land. And that disinhibition can fuel your artistic freedom. What do I mean by that? Okay, I'll give you another example. One of my students, I gave a song by Pat Benatar. I gave her Love is a Battlefield. And she was just standing there and she was singing all the right notes, albeit timidly. And I was like, you got to put more oomph into it. And simply standing there, she was just legitimately unable to give me what I was looking for, both technically, musically, and performatively. And I looked at her and I said, I need you to do an exercise for me. I need you to be an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old or whatever age you were last free. Whatever was the last age you didn't care what the world thought. And I need you to turn this mic into a hairbrush. Close your eyes and turn the mic into a hairbrush. And jump on the bed and scream along with Pat Benatar. Yell out at the top of your lungs, we are strong. Heartache to heartache, we stand. Belt it out. Be free. Hop around. And that's a struggle. That's a really abstract exercise to do. It requires you to really give in to imagination. But her voice blossomed. As she started hopping around on the floor with her eyes closed, her voice opened. And I was getting a much better performance. It was so believable. But it's because she wasn't afraid to be goofy. She wasn't afraid to move her body. Technique doesn't give you that. It's not technical. It's imaginative. It's wondrous. It's disinhibited. Oftentimes we inhibit ourselves based on societal boundaries or barriers or expectations. There comes a moment where stop playing. You play too much. And there's a time and a place for everything. But building a performance for stage, for screen, play. You can't play if you're hopped up on technique. If you're hoping every note is going to be right, you can't play. I've had to learn to practice to a point. And then when I stand in the wings, when I'm about to walk out and sing, and I'm still learning and I'm still growing, but I have to stand there and abandon my obsession with being great. And I have to deliver whatever it is I came to deliver to the audience. I did a song in my last show called, I was about to tell y'all a bold-faced lie. I was about to say Happy Sad. That's a song from the Addams Family musical that I really like. It's not Happy Sad. It's a split title like that. It's from Company by Sondheim. Oh, it's Sorry Grateful. And I didn't practice it to be funny. But I was reading the room and I asked how many people in the room were married. And everybody in my audience raised their hands for the most part. And I asked, well, how many have been married more than, 10 years? And all the hands stayed up. And I said, oh, well, there might be more relatability in this piece than I think. Because one of the characters is describing what marriage is like, and he looks at the unmarried character and goes, "You're always sorry. You're always grateful." And they burst out laughing. And I realized this has a lighthearted relatability to them because it's funny, but don't play the laugh. Even though I can now accent the humor, I can't throw the whole piece away for the laugh, but I'm going to adjust my facial expressions, my posturing when I'm saying the lines that I know are obviously going to get a laugh. I'll lean into it, not ham it up per se, but bend my interpretation to the room. If I was attached wholly and solely to my own technical preparation, I would have missed a moment to connect with an entire room of people. And so balance is necessary. We have to learn it. Technique is king to a point. I had practiced it so seriously. And I told my students when they were going up for adjudication, there's a moment where they have to stop practicing and they just have to trust what they know and then read the room. And I watched so many of them now. I'm not super disappointed because they're young. Some of them, this is their first time. Some of them, this is their first time doing this for me, and I have different expectations. All of us as coaches have different expectations and interpretations of what a good artist is, but we're all working towards artistic greatness, however that comes for us, and however we interpret that. But I watched some of them think themselves out of a great performance. They were good because they were technically sound, but they took a moment and thought technically instead of feeling emotionally. I had another student during the week sort of futz with me about the necessity for runs to be crisp. And what I mean by that is he labeled and named. He named a specific gospel group as his favorite singers. And I was like, that's cool. He goes, yeah, because nobody's seeing them vocally. I don't care who your favorite vocalists are. Nobody is untouchable. And I impressed that to him. Like there's always someone else that can do what you do. And the audience will perceive it as better. And he looked at me and he was like, well, who's seeing them? And I don't want to name the group because I don't want to get into a who's better or who's worse argument. But I brought up a lot of old school artists who had inspired this young group. And he was like, but their runs aren't as crisp. Like I can hear every note. And I said, well, one, your perception is shifted because you have not listened to these artists when they were the age of the people you idolize now. You have only listened to them in the stage of adulthood they've been in since you've been alive. And I had to rewind the clock for him. I had to show him early Aretha. I had to show him the Clark sisters in their prime. I had to show him Daryl Coley in his prime. I had to show him Vanessa Bell Armstrong in her prime. And he was like, I looked at him and I said, well, who sounds like this? And he struggled and he might have named one or two people. I said, exactly. Those people sound like these people because they grew up imitating these people. Who is doing something new that is equally as emotionally impactful as well as musical as what they were doing, of the trends they were setting? And he froze. I said, because that's where you're missing your understanding by simply imitating someone else's technique. You can practice an artist's runs till you're blue in the face. God could grant me the ability to do every run that passes through my mind. If I picked up a mic and went toe to toe with the person I've studied the most, Kim Burrell, she's cooking me because 80% of my go-to runs come from practicing hers. She's the originator. She can turn a page and invent something new. And because she hasn't exposed me to it, I'm going to blank because it's her sound that I'm growing from. And that's why I had to stop necessarily copying other artists. I can borrow, I can understand, but I have to listen to, okay, that's what she did. How is my ear hearing this moment? Again, this has nothing to do with technique. This has everything to do with the art of it all, the you of it all. And so I finally got him with that, you know, you've copied everything these young people have done. And if you get on stage with them, they're going to smoke you because they thought of it first. And because it's how they naturally operate, instead of them copying someone else, this is how they naturally flow. You're copying them. So if they turn a page and evolve in front of your eyes, you're going to be lost. You're going to be dusted. He was like, oh. I said, in the second half of this foolish comparison of whose runs are cleaner, I said, I appreciate the cleanest of runs, and you appreciate the cleanest of runs because we both do what they do. So we have a specified and specialized appreciation of their technique. But an audience is going to react to the overall storytelling of their ability combined with their vocal virtuosity, which is why still we can have the older legends pick up a mic. And if everyone wasn't standing before, the older legend does something that snatches the standing ovation mid-performance. Because we pursue technique beyond believability. You can't rehearse to the point where you're locked into a specific technique. And it's gone over my head for many years. Me, I am guilty of this. You can ask my best friend, and next time I have her on the show, I will ask her. But if you were to ask my best friend who has watched me on my musical journey, I spent so much of the time disinterested in lyrical integrity. I didn't care about the lyrics. I'm like, I have to sound pretty. But what about the lyrics? I'm just going to sing the lyrics, but I have to make my voice sound beautiful. I have to hit all these notes. It took me many years to realize why she was asking me about the lyrics. I'm like, the story. It was, like I said, the point where I reached my vocal benchmark and still was unmoved because I'm not telling the story. I have in front of me a vocal adjudication form, and I have a couple of them. I'm going to end up building my own. But growing up in Florida under the Florida Vocal Association, there are three categories. There are three categories they judge you on: tone quality, technical preparation, and musical effect. And as a young person, I was always obsessed with tone quality and technical preparation. And it says how much of the vocal, what tendencies of vocal performance fall into which. So tone quality is resonance, focus and placement, posture, breath, vowels, consonants, register adjustment control, but also beauty and freedom. Huh? That's in tone quality and not musical effect. Yeah. Because when your technique falls into place, I've discussed this with my teacher. My benchmark is, my personal mile marker is for all my singing to feel like nothing is happening in my body. I don't want to feel my neck tensing. I don't want to feel my back uh, caving in on itself. I don't want to feel my throat closing. I want to feel nothing and hear effortlessness because I put in the practice. That's beauty and freedom. Once you practice these other things enough and they start to come naturally, the beauty and the freedom occurs. Then we have technical preparation, which is intonation, pitch accuracy, rhythmic precision, stability of pulse. Stability of pulse is like, are you staying in time with the music? Are you keeping the pulse consistent? Are you rushing? Are you dragging? Because you can be rhythmically accurate as far as the notes are supposed to go, but you could be rushing up the pulse, the heartbeat of the song, or dragging it. Is it memorized? Are you balanced with the music? Score preparation is a funny one. that's under technical preparation because a lot of my students don't read music. And so they have a hard time creating a physical piece of score to prepare. But I tell them, and the other coach told them, write your words out. And I said, once you write them out and once you learn it, past memorization, whatever notes I give you, write it into those words. If you're changing a vowel shape, write it out. This is part of the technique is king, right? Because if you write all this out and you practice it, it'll be internalized and you don't have to think about it. It's balance. Prepare the score. Now we get into musical effect, phrasing, dynamics, style, dramatic effect, expression, interpretation, staging, and movement, right? So we get into these things and we always forget about staging and movement. So many times singers just stand, and it's the most boring thing ever. And it's because they're thinking specifically of their posture. But move your hands, move your arms, move your shoulders, be free. Yeah, you need a certain posture. But once you've grounded what needs to be grounded in, move around within that shape. I looked at this sheet and realized how many things that I, as a young person, had let slip. And then I showed this to my students. It was like, these are the things I'm talking about. Style is not technique based, the style goes with the art side. How are you stylizing this? How are you interpreting this? Yeah, you're belting this high note, but why? What's the story? Dramatic effect, expression, interpretation. I'm teaching these people to be analytical, and in the process of teaching them, I'm teaching myself. And it just illuminated everything I had talked about in the previous week of my podcast, the previous episode, I should say. And I had all these thoughts, and they were running through my mind. And I just couldn't wait to impart them on these people. And I watched a couple of my students really blossom for the first time in months when they finally got it. I gave them the technique. I said, just fix this one little thing, but be free. And they bloomed like flowers. Because when you reach that point of freedom, yeah, you can still use a technical adjustment here or there, but it's just the one. So if you make a little mental tick, oh, make sure you breathe right there because you usually don't. And that's the only thing you say to yourself and the rest is flying. You're going to soar. You're going to reach incredible heights. Technique is king to a point. And when you let go of that ego and that insecurity, you make art. You make something beautiful. I am reminded of when I was a piano teacher over the past couple of years. And some days I didn't come in and run scales with the students, and some days I didn't have a lesson plan, and that's my shortcoming as a teacher. But I would walk in and sit down, and we had two pianos in the room, and they'd sit down and go, "What am I supposed to play today?" And I look at them and I said, "I don't know. Play me something beautiful. Whatever you want, make it beautiful." 90% of the time, they were flabbergasted. But once they got past the flabbergasting of it all, the shock of not having guidelines, and they got past the stumble, they started thinking, what is beautiful to me? What do I think is beautiful? Well, this note with this note, and then if I go here, and oh, if I play this next, oh, wait, I'm going to play this chord instead of that chord. Oh, yeah, now I'm going to do this rhythm. Oh, listen, I'm doing the thing. I watch the notes swirling around in their mind. I watched the freedom come because I had already given them the technique in the weeks building up to at least be able to maneuver the board freely. Play me something beautiful. You have to challenge yourselves. Do the practice, do the technical prep, do your drills, warm up, and then be free. Play me something beautiful. And beauty doesn't mean clean. You can give a gritty, nasty performance, but it's beautiful. It's enamoring. I'm hanging on the edge of my seat because it's true. Because it's the truth. You're in your truth. You're in the art's truth. Play me something beautiful. That's the through line. That's the part two. Technique is king to a point. But once the technique is grounded, okay, now use that technique to play me something beautiful. What do I play? I don't care. Just make it beautiful. Whatever that means to you. Technique is impressive, but that beauty is where the art lies. There's beauty in sadness. There's beauty in rage. There's beauty in disappointment. I wrote in one of my notes, show me disgust, because you're singing something about being disgusted, but I don't see it on you because you're just singing the words and the notes at me. Show me your disgust. Look, I'm even making a disgusted face right now for those of you that can see me, which is none of you, but that's besides the point. Show me your disgust. Show me your rage. Fill me with love. Take me in. That's all I got for you. Technique is king to a point. And after that point, make it true. Technique is king to a point. Once you have the technique, now use the technique to tell the truth. Whatever that truth may be, whether that truth is heartbroken, whether that truth is enraged, whether that truth is enamored, whether that truth is confused, whether it's distorted, whether it's misunderstood. Use the technique to tell the truth. The truth exists in the balance. I hope this was a good tune-up for you. I hope I didn't just ramble for half an hour. I hope this was truly a good tune-up for anyone listening. And I always tell you all, this is not just for singers. This is for any artist, anyone endeavoring into a passion. Use your technique, but tell the truth. Use the technique to amplify the truth. I taught a student a rock song. I gave her the technique to be able to belt and growl wherever she needed to. I said, now use it. Do you know the story? Well, learn the story. Then use the technique to amplify the story. That's all I got for you tune up this week. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, afternoon, evening, morning. Hello and goodbye. And as always, I hope this helped you all get in tune.